problems last few days. There we go.
Hello, good evening, and I hope you're all doing well in the chat. So as you can see tonight, I've got 4 panelists with me, and this is kind of a spur of the moment type show that me and Charlotte decided to come up with. So to start us off, I want to introduce you to my panelists. First things first, Ian Charlotte's been my co-host in various different reviews and panels that we've on the channel, so she's practically on every stream with me. So how did you do, Charlotte?
Well, you do call me your boss, so
Yeah.
no, I'm still smiling. I don't know why. There could be something that we might talk about.
Awesome. So next we have JT from the type of tale I've show on the Facebook YouTube channel, and it's to actually for anyone we have you on the channel eventually.
Hiya, Daniel. Hi, Charlotte. Yeah, thanks very much, Scottish Davros. Woo! For inviting me on the show. It's lovely to be here, and it's great to be chatting with you this evening. I'm very, very, very excited about this. Just don't get cheeky, though. All right, Daniel. Just don't, just watch what you're doing. He's a cheeky
Daniel,
one, this one.
He never.
And last but no means he's the host of one of the most enjoyable shows on YouTube, Type for Tail. And I enjoyed the show that is a variety of different topics discussed. So welcome to the channel.
I'm delighted to be here. Delighted, Daniel.
Yeah. So obviously you heard this fantastic news, and this fantastic news is that obviously chibnall and whittaker are getting the book. So to start us off, how are we all feeling about the news? So we'll start with the us. So are you feeling optimistic, or are you like myself, a bit of a skeptic?
There's always a chance we don't know. Obviously, with the unknown, we don't know who the next showrunner is yet. We don't know who the doctor is. It could be a while until we know. But I think we all were saying before this news, a half sort of measure of just making Whittaker go was not going to be enough. We needed a whole, basically, regime change with the show. We needed Chibnall gone, because with him, then his writers are going. I think also, as part of the announcement, Matt Stevens, he's also going, like his main producer, and he was just as bad when it came to like back-talking the fans and having sort of this holier-than-thou attitude. So to me, it seems like a proper, that the BBC have at least realised just making a bit of a change wasn't enough for this show. They needed to make a big change. And that's what I'm quite optimistic about, that we've now got a chance, and this is what I said on Dan's stream, that the show has got a chance now, and I think that's the best word, and it just, because I wasn't ready for it to disappear into the night, basically. I wanted it to find at least one last bit of glory before the BBC maybe do finally decide, let's just stop for a bit. So that's sort of my approach right now.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree with that.
So we'll move on to JT, and it's now I was actually quite surprised at you for the reaction. I felt that, I thought that you would have a similar sort of reaction to myself, a bit more skeptical.
A bit of a skeptic.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, the way I look at this is it wasn't a surprise. I mean, we were talking about this, as you guys know, on the Type 40 Live for months. We were hearing, excuse me, I can say no, we were hearing certain things were going on behind the scenes last year. And that's now all come out as being able to say, well, actually, those things we were hearing were right. So when the news actually leaked, as we now know, in January, and we spoke about it, and you guys were involved in that, and we chatted about that, and that's when I thought, well, this is great news because we knew it was happening. So when the news broke on Thursday, I was ecstatic. I mean, the adrenaline hit because the official confirmation had come, and then we were all chatting, and we were all on social media together, and we were all having this celebration, and you felt that celebration going on. So the way I've looked at this is it was just confirmation of something that we'd heard about last summer, towards the end of last summer, maybe. And so I just got on with it, Daniel, But my outlook about the whole thing is I think right now is the special time because we can all bounce off each other with each other's shows. We can all talk to each other in a different way. We can communicate in a way that we didn't do even when Capaldi stepped down. And I'm enjoying the social aspect of that going on, as well as looking at other YouTubers with an alternative point of view. And there are some of them out there who just annoy me, and there are some of them out there that I'm generally feeling quite sorry for, if you know what I mean, because they're younger and they're like, this isn't the norm for them yet.
Yeah. I think right. So, and how are you feeling about the announcement?
Well, I bought these. Does that? So, well, yes. Yeah. I mean, I think what JT's sort of talking about there is the response. I think the response from the very soul. Something wells up when this actually happens. Obviously, we did hear about this a while ago. We have been speculating about it, particularly since the start of this year, when when rumors start to make it into the press. And so you prepare yourself for this. And, and there was a couple of people who were coming at me on social media, doing the usual thing of calling me names and saying I'm making things up or saying that I'm really negative person and all that kind of thing. You can't possibly know this. No, I don't know this. But when you get to a certain point, not necessarily in your years of life, but when you get to a certain point in looking at the media, not even just this show, but the way that TV and the entertainment industry works, and you see the patterns to it. Okay, if something makes it into the press, there's usually no smoke without fire. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And so just as JT said, this wasn't a surprise, but I think how it broke. I mean, somebody said to me on Twitter, quite a nice guy who's a big fan of Jodie Whittaker. I think he calls himself William Who over on Twitter. And he was saying how she's going to stay. Otherwise, they'll either say it at Comic-Con or she's going to stay. And I said, oh, no, not necessarily. Why would they, if they had that to announce, why would they announce that at Comic-Con? Just simple logistically, why would they blow two opportunities for mass publicity in one? Here he is, there's Ian. Yeah,
trouble.
Why would they do that? And I said to this guy, and he was like, oh, no, she's going to stay. She's going to stay. She's going to stay. And I said, well, look, I hope if that's what you want, I hope you're happy. But I really think that you should prepare yourself to hear something to the effect that she is leaving sooner rather than later. But I think the big surprise, the double whammy, the icing on the cake, certainly for me, I think probably for you, Charlotte, what you said earlier on at the top of the show, was Chris Chibnall going to, because that was the one that was a lot more uncertain, I think, and we couldn't really know where the wind was going to blow on that. You know, I'd heard whispers there too, but nowhere near as strong as the stuff about her. But I think that, you know, I mean, you heard JT, you know, this guy, you know, when we spark off each other on Type 40 Live, you know, you hear, and I do get a lot of feedback from people who say, you're just a bunch of miserable complainers. But you could not meet a warmer and more positive, more optimistic or inclusive Doctor Who fan than JT. You can see the look on his face. That's genuine pleasure, genuine excitement and optimism for the future. Because this is who we are as Doctor Who fans. Deep down, we are positive, optimistic, and creative people. And here we are on this platform now, as we're doing now, Daniel. Thanks so much to your invite to the two of you. We can talk about this and throw all these ideas up in the air, have a good chinwag about it all, and and kind of cleanse our palates and prepare for what may come next. It could be a while, but we're going to have a lot of fun in the meantime, Daniel.
Yeah. So the very next question I wanted to put to the panel is that do you think that the whole merchandise can be saved in such as the magazine, for example, because of practically having to beg for subscriber us constantly and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So do you think that there's some parts of the merchandise that's pretty RIP, or do you think it can be saved?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I think it depends which way they go now, because that's the thing that because I like to, obviously, because we're friends of Noel and we're friends with a few people who have sources or talk about this stuff. It was that was the first thing that a lot of us started noticing, actually, wasn't it? That the merch was steadily turning away from Whittaker. It was just it really was a big eye-opener, I think, the merch to a lot of the fan base. I mean, the fact that she's still technically got a whole year and she's just disappearing from everything. It's just so that is incredible. So I think it just depends if the merch decides to actually wants to now survive. And I think they will, personally. I think they've already made the decisions, a lot of them, that they know they have to turn away from this era. Yeah. Because if you look at the annual, if you look at how much David Tennant, I know on Type 40, Dan has spoken about that, and a lot of us have, look at how much David Tennant's been wheeled out nowadays. Yeah. I think the merch has been for the last year survival mode, and I think it's just going to carry on doing that. But the magazine, I think that's one of possibly the most flimsy ones, because they've been so much connected with Chibnall's production team. They've been so much connected to bashing fans, to having that attitude of, you're all wrong, this year was the bestest ever, and it's just going brilliantly. So I think the magazine's probably the most flimsy, but I think a lot of the other merch is going to just do what makes money basically for it, is my feeling.
Yeah.
For people such as us, JT, I mean, I don't know how I don't want to speak for you, mate, but when I hear Charlotte talk there about the merch, I think this is the difference, isn't it, between your generation of fan and ours, because they're back in particularly the mid 80s and upwards, there was so little merch, and so it was never an indicator for us, was it, JT, about which way the wind was going to blow?
Yeah. I have to firstly say that every time I'm on a show with Charlotte and she mentions the word merch, I always have to laugh. The reason being, of course, is that I know it as merchandise. Charlotte's from a different generation, as she calls it, and it just makes me smile. I don't know, I just think it's so funny. So that's why I was smiling when anytime Charlotte mentions merch.
It's all right, Ian's already told me off, so you're not the only one.
Oh, has he?
In the chat.
Oh, yes, so he has merch. It's merchandise, Charlotte. Thanks, Ian. Yeah, so Daniel, it's a great question about the merchandise as well, but you are speaking to two old hands here. Like when we grew up, we didn't have merchandise as such. The only thing we had is the legendary Target books. You may get the odd jigsaw. God love jigsaws. They got through a lot of those during the lockdown. I don't know about you lot. You know, and you would get, and it built and built and built. And even in the 80s, as Dan says, we didn't have that much. There was, in the 90s, when the show was off the air, in what we call the wilderness years, of course, there was a sort of explosion. And lots of things happened while the show was off the air. We had original novels coming out from Virgin and then BBC Books. The magazine still went, and I'll come back to the magazine if I may, guys, in a minute.
Yeah.
Is that the police going for Ian? It's probably the.
No,
so,
it's me. I don't know what that was.
But you know, so from that point of view, I mean, we had the Dapol figures that came off, and whatever your opinion of those, it doesn't matter. At the time in the late 80s, it's the only sort of line of toys we ever had. These little cute little Star Wars things. I wish I had one near me to show you if you don't know them. So I'm actually quite optimistic about the merchandise. We are seeing a reduction in it now, which to me is a familiar pattern. Charlotte, you're absolutely right. Daniel, you know as well that the meetings about the merchandise would have been held by BBC Studios last year. So the annual, and we pointed out on the Type 40 show this week, the Danilo calendars in the UK. Everything would have been looked at last year, and wherever a certain face may have been, it may have been taken away, because they knew then that 2022 would be a transitional year or the start of something different. So I think, yes, I think the merchandise will survive because we've been through this before. As for the magazine, that's a different kettle of fish. We all know that the magazines are plummeting. The sales figures for Doctor Who magazine, as we know, are not brilliant. We do know that the current show has not helped the magazine, because if you don't have a show that people watch, you're not going to buy its magazine. I think that will, no pun intended, I think it is going to fold, and that's a shame after 40 years. But I just don't think. I'd have to think twice as a collector who collected every issue from 1979 to its 40th edition over 40 years. I would have to be very impressed with a TV show or its new format to go and buy the magazine again in this day and age.
Yeah.
Do you buy it, Daniel? Do you buy the magazine? I haven't asked you that before.
I used to buy the occasional should since chibnall and that.
Yeah.
The cover I've not really bothered, because you can sense the contempt that the production team have for the fans and stuff like that, and the whole sort of team that was put to the police and the previous us now. I'm myself still in my twenties, but I prefer.
They've got to rub that in, haven't they, JT? They've got to rub it in.
I know. I was just imagining a little 20-year-old Scottish Davros there.
And I actually prefer hearing what the older fans have to actually say, basically, because they know how the fans am supposed to be, basically. I don't want to be trapped in some sort of echo chamber, basically.
Good for you.
What I think the magazine has become is this echo chamber.
I'd agree with you.
What's your idea? What's your thoughts about the merchandise going forward?
You.
Sorry,
yeah,
Dan.
I just talking about the magazine briefly. I think contempt is a really strong word, Daniel. And I think that, but I could forgive any fan for receiving it that way. I think it's not contempt. I think it is. I think they take us for granted. Particularly where that magazine is concerned, because it's been there so long, and they know a lot of us are completists, and that is a seriously hard habit to break. And occasionally they throw us a bone and sort of remind us how good the magazine used to be 5 years ago, let alone 20 years ago, during the wilderness years, where this may seem ridiculous. 25 years ago, that magazine was absolutely an essential purchase.
Yes,
and it was very creative and very. I used to thrill to just going into Smith's to pick it up every 4 weeks. It seems unimaginable now. But yes, I'd say that the magazine, oh God, and I hate admitting this because I know that Marcus Kerner is doing his best, the current editor, he's doing his best on that title. But I'm getting the feeling that the magazine is going to become a casualty of this war. And not the only one either, but the one that is the most sort of tragic. As regards the rest of the merchandise, I think people try and confuse the issue. I think people try to cloud the waters, and of course they call everybody names. But you see, they can do that, and they can get away with it when it's the case of because nobody can tell who's actually watching a TV show. You've got a number, but you can't see inside everybody's homes, and so people can sort of make up this phantom demographic and this idea that there are people out there who are receiving this in a really sort of excited way simply because the telly's on. And it's not like that. Even now, some people have the telly on, just have background noise on. But when it comes to merchandise, people putting their hands in their pockets, money that they have earned themselves, or if they're a student, for example, they've only got so much money to manage over a certain period of time. They weigh up what's a good use, what's a good spend, what's going to brighten their days. And people are choosing not to buy Doctor Who products. But I think if it was the simple fact is, if the TV show was speaking to their soul, they would want to have it. They would want to have that reflected in their homes, like as we see in the beautiful Doctor Who loft there. And because that is our surroundings are a reflection of us inside. God, I say that as I look like I'm in some sort of Croatian prison. I've been decorating and doing some DIY here. Upstairs is a different story. But blink
twice, Dan. Blink twice.
I'm actually chained to a radiator, everybody. Doing the Terry Waite thing. No, but that's what it is. And so, if people were being touched and being excited, they would want it in their environment. And I know that we've got all this sort of digital stuff. We've got digital magazines. We've got digital games. Top Trumps is gone digital. But really, there are a lot of physical media out there still. There are a lot of formats that work for Doctor Who, and they have tried publishing some titles, starting new lines of books, but it's not taking. And the simple reason why is that the people do not view it as a worthwhile use of their money. They're not going to get any value out of it, and that's why merchandise is value. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about the appeal of Funko Pops is largely beyond me. But it's like how much, like 3 inches of solid plastic. But I talk to enough people. Be careful. I talk to enough people who do collect those, and I've seen the looks on their faces I believe them when they say they're excited about this product. But I noticed that even Funko have sort of declined to extend their Doctor Who license.
I think it's actually back in now, Dan. Actually, I think they've gone back to it. I think so. I'm sure I read somewhere recently that Funko are back in the Doctor Who fold, and that's when I started thinking, oh, something's been offered. They've gone back to say, don't do that.
That's what I was wondering. Do you think, because now we're going to be in that time period of who's going to be 14, and I honestly think when it comes to the choice for this Doctor, I don't think the showrunner is going to have a lot of. I've got a feeling. How do I word this? There's going to be lots of parties having a say in who's next.
Yes,
and I think that's because of how badly this current era has done. So I think the merch might be able to, licensees, that's a better word for this, are going to be telling the BBC, you cannot go down this route again because it's nearly killed us, or we cannot sell.
Charlotte, may I step in and recommend and plug a podcast? But for a change, it's not one of mine. I'd just like to tell you all, the very best account I've seen of all of this, of the merchandise question, is an episode of a podcast called 42 to Doomsday. They're based in Australia. They spoke to a toy retailer in his shop about this, and he explained the way in which, I mean, obviously it's from an Australian perspective on the other side of the world, but so you get the Australian, the way that they get their products is slightly different to how we do in countries where they're sort of manufactured or where it's the first stop. But the general lay of the land, as he explains it on that show, is that there were several people who had licenses for Doctor Who, didn't renew them, but said that they would potentially return when they changed the Doctor. And that wasn't necessarily, they didn't specify gender on this show, but when they changed the Doctor.
Yeah.
So, and I firmly believe that entire episode of 42 to Doomsday is essential listening for any Doctor Who fan. It really is great work. Did you hear that, JT?
You recommended it, so I did, and I thought it was very interesting. I think as well, it's also interesting between Daniel and Charlotte, because you guys are of a certain age. You haven't been through this before, where we have. And I think the fact that we have been through this before, back in in '89, as sort of, this is all the water off a duck's back for us now, if you know what I mean. And to answer your question about the merchandise, Daniel, I don't think it's going to be affected. And I say that because when the show was off the air from '89 to '96, and then again from '96 to 2005, we were getting various bits of merchandise coming through starring all 7 Doctors and then all 8 Doctors. So when we got to the 40th anniversary, for example, we did get some stuff like that, for example, the Corgi range. You know, whatever you think of the Corgi range, that was a limited edition. There was a tin that went with it and other bits, but there was bits and pieces. And then suddenly what happened when you got to 2005 is by 2006, explosion of orange and yellow branded everything, you know, absolutely massive. And that made money for BBC Worldwide now, BBC Studios. So that, Charlotte, I agree with you. I think there will be a say there on how anything comes forward, because they cannot afford to lose that sort of money. And because we know that the BBC is in trouble when it comes to license fee payers and stuff, it's like we were saying on the Type 40 show the other night, I actually do believe they will be looking more at the format at this stage. They will be going out with a carrot to licensees, Charlotte and Daniel, to say, oh, this is what we're doing, and we would like the merchandise to come back, and we you know, and they will be kissing arse basically. But I do have something in me, Daniel, is saying it might now be a co-production between the BBC and BBC Studios from now on, so that BBC Studios have that say, which they haven't really had before.
Yeah. See, personally, I would like to see Julie Arden come back into the fold, because she was in here at the height of the though, and I think it needs somebody with a sort of with a hands note, to be honest with you, because I don't think anybody knows what the hell it is that they're actually being employed to do on the show. Because there's not a writer that I'd probably say, okay, I'll keep you on to write an episode for the next production team. They're all incredibly bad to write, and I've not enjoyed any of this era's episodes at all. Like it's the first time that's ever happened. So so they basically need to get rid of all the current production team and start again in order for me to trust the again, if that makes any sense.
No,
Yeah,
it does.
What do you think, Dan? Because I know you've been sort of championing Julie. So what do you think about that?
I think that Julie is the only. She's the best placed person. Actually, JT mentioned this yesterday on Type 40 Live. Within the boundaries of the UK, because people talk about Netflix all the time in regards to Doctor Who, and a lifeline from America, even from BBC America, or just from some big American network with lots of money, or entertainment conglomerate with lots of money. But there are plenty of, I think there are key people in the UK who have the resources, who have the experience, who would. I mean, they may have other priorities. I think Julie, you could say she's been there, done that. But I think that Julie could quite easily marshal the resources, the practical resources, as well as the creative people, new creative people who maybe haven't been involved with Doctor Who before. Not, and a mix of ages too. She's very connected with within the industry.
Oh yeah.
It's been 12 years since she left Doctor Who, and in that time, the woman has built, I wouldn't say built an empire, but she's built a formidable kind of TV factory with a track record for good, solid genre television delivered on time that looks as good as anything that's been produced anywhere else in the world, to my eyes. And I think that she is, because she's been involved with Doctor Who before and knows the BBC inside out, she'd be able to speak their language too, and they would possibly defer to her in a way that they wouldn't have done with Chris Chibnall, I don't think, or with the majority of other potential candidates for this role, who would be kind of puppets, I think, JT. And I think, yeah, so if they were to, I think Julie is the kind of person who, if they gave it to her, it would have to be with more or less free reign from her, and they would entrust that, because I think Lorraine Hegarty works there too, doesn't she?
Oh, she does, yeah.
And I think that's what it needs. I think it kind of needs to be hothoused, really, rather than and away from Piers Wenger, who is as big a liability as the two who are leaving. That man. I don't know Piers. I'm sure he buys his mother a nice bunch of flowers on Mother's Day, all that kind of thing. But from the outside looking in, he appears to be an absolute nothing more than a boob at work, and somebody who is completely in it for himself, and is as much a key player in the mismanagement of Doctor Who as in 2021 as anybody else we could name.
I totally agree with that. I mean, to bring Julie and Jane Tranter back in. I'm a huge fan. I don't know if Charlotte and Daniel. I don't know if you've watched The Discovery of Witches.
I'm going to try and find it because you keep recommending it, and
I absolutely do recommend it, pal. And I would to you as well, Daniel. It's on Sky. You can get it on DVD and Blu-ray now. It's had 2 series. They've just managed to complete series 3. That's coming out soon. For Doctor Who fans, it's a must-watch as well, because it's got elements of time travel in it. There's elements of magic. It's about werewolves and vampires and all this. It's set in Britain, and it's really, really cool, and it looks great. And when you watch that and then you look at the credits, as Doctor Who fans, we always notice Doctor Who names on there, and you'll just see everybody there, and you go, that's where they went. They went to Bad Wolf Productions. Because what Chibnall did, of course, as well, is he got rid of everybody in Wales that was working on Doctor Who prior and brought in his own tick-boxing element of a team. And that's, again, harmed them, because for some of these people, no disrespect if they happen to be watching Daniel's and Charlotte's show tonight, but where have they come from? What was your experience? Did you just come out straight from the job centre? I'm not too sure, because the experience hasn't shown through the series, apparently. So I also think, Daniel, that there's years and years ago, co-production deals were always spoken about when Doctor Who ended in 1989, because a certain person at the BBC made it clear that they were looking at doing it, because at the time Thatcher had insisted that a lot of output had to go to independents, and that's just the way it was. So that's why the BBC is the state it is today, to be honest. Because they had to reduce the size. Now, Doctor Who is the only show drama show that they actually still own outright. It's theirs. It's a massive property, even though it's going through this little blip in its history.
And they
it
were
could
going
be.
to farm it out as well, weren't they, JT? There were several
They say
people.
they were.
Paul Stone in particular was looking.
Well, yeah. I mean, there were lots of people that went in to look. Verity Lambert, as we know, went to meet with them. Kit Pedler went to meet with them. There was lots of different names that went. I think they were just going through the motions to appease the politics of the day, because it makes far too much money. And for the BBC to say, right, it's a BBC One order, which has to go to the BBC. And if you're going to bring in studios into that, there's your partnership already there. And that keeps it wholly British. It keeps it wholly within the BBC. It would mean that the BBC One have something to fill at certain times on a certain day. It means that the BBC are involved with an element of the BBC that they trust. And it's still a partnership. And the money still stays within the BBC. It means they don't have to negotiate a contract with an independent company. They don't have to give them part of the marketing deal. They don't have to give them part of the merchandising proceeds. They don't have to, I can't see it ever happening with the BBC. I'll be very surprised if it does.
They wanted to offload it back then. I mean, it was the constant talk, wasn't it, between 91 and around 94 time, ironically, around the time they were trying to ink the deal with
Amblin. Yeah,
but yeah, it was. I think Verity Lambert obviously felt proprietorial. No, I don't know if she felt an obligation, because I never spoke to the woman. I just know people who knew her. But I think that I think she still felt that it was her baby almost. And,
well, she was a big part of the start, wasn't she? So,
oh, she was the part of the start.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody
being like that.
I mean, disrespect again, but there's a certain generation out there that always quotes Sidney Newman back to me now. I'm sorry, he was a smaller element of the bigger story. It was Verity that took his idea, expanded it into the format that we know and love, and kicked it off and ran with it. And she was very strong with that in a world where she was the youngest and she was also a woman. And all these people around her. So good for Verity, because she gave us the show we know and love.
Yeah, but that's why I think maybe instead of like farming it out, a co-production is more likely, because if you look at Dark Materials, that was marketed very heavily on the BBC. They put it pride of place. I think it got quite good viewing figures. I could be wrong.
No, I think you're right. I think it got about 7 million.
Yes, and that was a co-production.
First season did really, really well. I think the second didn't do quite so well. But I think that's more a reflection of the audience, the way the general public feel about the BBC, I think, than the quality of the show itself.
Yeah. But, so I think I wouldn't be surprised. I'm the same. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe whatever we get in a couple of years or more than that, dependent on how long it takes them. I think a co-production is a possibility, because they still haven't. Because the BBC, they're always going to want to have enough control, I think, so it can benefit them.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I think they'll be smart if they did that, and they'd go, right, well, we'll still keep a good chunk of it, but like as we've all said, look at how they've managed it during Chibnall's run. They obviously just don't know what to do with this program now. They just don't know. Like, is it a Saturday night like adventure family show, or is it a Sunday drama show? It's like they can't decide even where to fit it on their schedule almost.
Yeah.
They trusted Chris Chibnall.
And I mean another thing that's annoyed me over the years is the sort of 45-minute format. I think the show has to be has to be given more time to develop stories and characters. That's why because that's why I'm more attracted to the classic series, as I feel as though you get time to develop stories as opposed to the 45-minute format, and it just seems a bit rushed.
I totally agree with you, Daniel. I mean, I've often said that they should get rid of this 45-minute nonsense now, because to be honest, we've had it for 15, 16 years. It's a bit boring now. I think the viewing, I think the attention spans are changed. I would take it back to half an hour. I've said this before, like in the classic days when I grew up. Half an hour episode, like one of the soaps as well, because there's a whole 4 generations that are used to that half hour thing. Bang, 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 bang. So I would do it and bring the cliffhangers back every episode. Stories based around 7 or 8 stories, depending on that, every year, and I would show it twice a week at 7 o'clock.
Well, that's what I
in the
would
week.
do,
Yeah, and I'd put it in the week.
The Mandalorian works in half-hour chunks, and I think Doctor Who could too.
Well, that's where it started, doesn't it, Dan? And if it went back to that, I always look at Peter Davison's era as a massive success because it was. They took it away from Saturdays where it had been for 18 years.
Well, also, JT,
and it was huge.
With more people watching on these things, the fact is, if less people are going to watch on the night and people are going to catch up or watch repeatedly, maybe when they're on the train or whatever, half an hour chunks are a lot easier to fit in than
absolutely. And Daniel's wee Scottish Davros there is right, aren't you? Because we knew our characters. We got to know our Doctor, which is why it was painful when like I was 14 when Davison left, and I just thought as a 14-year-old, damn, I've only just got to know him as this Doctor, and then he disappears and turns into this thing with this rugby player, and he's like, oh, here we go again. What the hell's wearing? And I felt I got to know the likes of Tegan and Nissa and even Perry to an extent. And I totally agree with you, Daniel. You can flesh out over 4 episodes of one story the characters more and the situation more, whereas on 45 minutes now, it's all bang, 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 and things have to be sacrificed. Totally agree with you.
See, I don't know though if maybe like a Sherlock, like when Moffat was doing Sherlock, like do less but longer. I don't know, that would also work because you've got that luxury and you can make it as an event. And I do think that's what a lot of telly is sort of becoming now. It feels like it's more about it's like sort of if it's not a binge model, it's an event. It needs to be one of the two.
You could potentially cover all those bases with Doctor Who in that format, and have each story say be 3 half hours. I probably wouldn't go 4-parters, 3 half hours, and then show omnibus editions or make the omnibus versions available as TV movies. And you could repeat them then on bank holidays or whatever else. You could even sell them individually through, so people could buy Doctor Who through iTunes or through wherever, in the format that suits them, in the half-hour chunks or as a feature-length thing. I think this is why when they put out on DVD, for example, you can buy those new animated Troughton stories, and they do them in either black and white or colour. And regardless of which one you would watch first, I think the principle behind those is to give people a choice there of so that there is something there, whichever your preference, you are going to buy. Odds are they're doubling, well, maybe not doubling, but they're going to increase the amount of people who buy that release because there's that other option there.
Absolutely.
I think you could package new TV in that way too. It doesn't necessarily have to be just old TV. I think you could offer people a choice of formats. Suit them and the device they may watch them on, the situation, whether it's in a family environment or on their way back from work or whatever. Just sort of slightly think in a broader way, because TV has changed so much. The way that we watch TV may have changed, but I think the way that we talk about television, okay, it's come onto shows like yours, Daniel. We do it here rather than just at water coolers and bus stops and things. But people will talk. People will find ways to talk and to share and to connect over this stuff. If it's good,
absolutely, it has to be good, doesn't it? I tell you, Charlotte, I get your point of what you're saying there, and I wouldn't personally either rule that out. It would depend on what they want to do. I think there is a market to bring Doctor Who back, and I've said this on Dan's show, on the Type 40 show. I would after this period where we've lost the British public, where we've lost the fans, and as you know, I will always big up the British public. We have to get them back. Without the British public, there's no Doctor Who.
Yes,
simple as that. Yeah. I would test the market in the anniversary year if this was me, bringing this show back, because I know the market is there. I'm now convinced the public will come back after what we saw on Thursday. I'm so happy about it. But I would test the market. Stop it, Davros. But I would test the market with 3 special 90-minute movies made particularly for television movies, because we know that audience works. It worked beautifully in 96 with McGann. It's worked with the Tennant specials, especially the one where he exited the show, End of Time Part 2. But I would certainly do some, and I would keep it very simple. I would have them to celebrate the show's 60th anniversary as well. So I would have a brand new male lead, a very, very good hit the ground running Doctor, no explanation of how he's there, but just the Doctor, the Daleks, and the TARDIS. The three elements, along with the title and the theme music, that are 60 years old. And I would have a good, cracking, linked story on cliffhangers over 3 episodes to broadcast October into November. Now, if they are a success, that's when I would go back and sit down with the business side and say, right, 2024, give us some money, let's do a series. But I would do it as 30-minute episodes.
Yeah, but I think the problem is now, and I think I'm surprised we haven't talked about it yet, so we'll do it briefly here. I've got a feeling with the Timeless Children stuff that the best approach is possibly that they could do is to just not talk about it.
Yeah.
Like you said, sort of have a Doctor just appear, have him just say he's a Time Lord, and just keep to the main basics, and then if they have to bring it up, just make a sort of throwaway line about it, because I think it's such a tangled mess.
The half-human thing was never mentioned again. So
actually, do you guys know that the Doctor's half human according to the 1996 TV movie?
Yeah, because it was actually brought up again in the abomination known as Healng, and I hate that episode. And it was actually brought up, and it was actually brought up randomly in Healng, where the Doctor's having that conversation with a shield, whatever she's calling herself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they had an arc, JT, that basically Moffat never even answered himself. And
no, he didn't. Yeah, he did that a lot.
Line, they sort of went, "Oh, what if it's a half human?" And I honestly think that was Moffat more just having a bit of a joke, because he knew it was like a sore point in the fandom.
That's passed me by, but again, the only people that know anything about the Timeless Children are the 3.9 million people that have watched it, and they are diehard. They're alleged fans. It can be forgotten by not acknowledging it. Just don't bother with it, because the general public don't know. The general public don't care. As far as the general public are concerned, the Doctor is always going to be male. He's always going to be a Time Lord. He's always going to fight the Daleks. That's all they need to know.
On the odd, when you do talk to a member of the public who saw that, one of the few members of the public that saw that episode, you'll find that very, very few of them actually understood what they were seeing, and even fewer still cared. So I'd say most of them will have probably forgotten about it all by now.
I'm just impressed you've actually met somebody from the general public that's watched it, because I don't know anybody from the general public that's watched it. My family didn't watch it. My friends haven't watched it. Nobody knows about it. So I'm very impressed you've even got that, because the only person who used to watch it was a friend of mine, and she was quite keen on having Jodie Whittaker in this, but even she stopped around about episode 6, the spider one.
And
she stopped.
That one sent a lot of people away.
Well, she stopped with that one, and when she told me a while back, she said, "Oh, I watched Doctor Who again, and it's not even the Doctor anymore. They've changed it." And I said, "Oh, that'll be this Timeless Children thing they're always telling me about on Type 40 and stuff." And she said, "Well, it was bloody awful. I won't be watching that again."
Whenever I do bump into people who are still watching it, I can count them on the fingers of one hand. It always starts the same way. Yeah, and it is. Yeah, it's not up to the full 5. It always starts always starts the same way. Because obviously, when people know that you're a Doctor Who fan in particular, you said with its friends or family or whatever, it always starts now with, "Oh my God, what have they done to Doctor Who?" As if I'm partly responsible. So I have to say, "No, I agree with you. It's terrible. Don't come at me with this. It really has nothing to do with me." Or
I get the same.
Do you get the same, Daniel?
Yeah.
Yeah. It just shows you, though, the legacy of this character. And I say often, with no disrespect meant to our friends or who are fans out of the UK, they just don't get it. To them, it's very much just another sci-fi show. Yeah. And for us, it's something totally different. It's part of our culture in Britain. I mean, you'll see any TV show or you'll hear anybody that will go into a space that looks small on the outside and they go inside, they go, oh my God, it's like the TARDIS, or a dustbin can look like a Dalek, it's ingrained into us, and to hear
exterminate, isn't it? Exterminate,
like, exactly. Yeah,
guys, Doctor Who is kind of, there's one person who a prolific YouTuber of genre entertainment, and a particular hashtag that insists that Doctor Who is dead, and I think that and for him it is. Who I mean, it's Gary at Nerdrotic. He R.I.P. Doctor Who. And I know Gary a little bit, and I know where he's coming from, and I understand it, and I know that he loves the show. I know that he adores Doctor Who as much as we do, but I think that it's not many British people will share that sentiment because it isn't because, as you say, JT, it is kind of just another TV show, one of many. They don't have the same. They don't have this. It's not the cultural touchstone that it is there. So the idea that R.I.P. Doctor Who is dead. No, it's never going to die now. But it will be what we make of it. And even if the BBC wash their hands of it or mothball it, that doesn't mean that Doctor Who will not continue. The New Adventures novels prove that it'll continue with all of us. So Doctor Who won't ever die.
No, I mean, it won't actually. I mean, Daniel will know Glasgow like I do. We still have traditional TARDIS-shaped police boxes in Glasgow. Yeah. There's quite a few of them. Now, they are protected. In the 1990s, the council protected them. And there's various groups that will go around and look after them. At the moment, a couple of them are quite tacky looking because they've actually made money out of them by selling them out as shops. They've been coffee shops, and now there are other things, like vape shops and stuff like that. But there's a couple of beautiful ones, isn't there, in Glasgow, Daniel? And through the 90s especially, I was thrilled because I would have to walk past them all the time on my way out to clubs and stuff like this. And I would always see generations of children having their pictures taken with the TARDIS.
Really?
And there's also this thing that goes on now, which makes me laugh, because those police boxes move. Daniel, back me up on this. They move. They are never in the exact same positions. And I'm thinking, this is the council having a laugh. They're shifting them deliberately.
Yeah, but I think as well, just to touch upon that, that's why I've been saying for ages, like, whatever Chibnall does, he's just a current caretaker. That's the word I use. He doesn't own Doctor Who. He's not created Doctor Who. He's just happens to be in charge for a while. Yeah. And whatever he does, it doesn't change what's gone before for me. I can still remember watching Matt popping out of that TARDIS when he was wet through, seeing Amy for the first time, and me just sort of almost instinctively going, "You're my doctor." And like, just the more he carried on, the more I just fell in love with that incarnation. And then watching Eccleston see the Dalek for the first time, because that's when I connected with 11. I liked him for his first couple of episodes, but it wasn't until I saw Eccleston give that amazing performance when you just saw all the damage the Time War had done. And he just did it without it wasn't the dialogue that convinced me of that, even though it was good dialogue. It was Eccleston's face, his eyes, the way
his performance,
he snarled his lines. He was like an animal almost. And all those things, they stick with us as fans. So they're not going to go anywhere, and that's why I will end. I agree. I don't think Chibnall has killed it. I think he's just done a terrible mishandling, and we're just going to have to grit our teeth and wait for the next person.
It is because I've heard this from Kyle, who is also a co-host on the Type 40 podcast, and Kyle is a very kind of neutral person on this whole topic. He was all for the female doctor, all that kind of thing, and he said to me on a recent episode, he said, make no mistake, this was just before Comic-Con, Doctor Who in America as a sort of living, breathing thing that excites people at places like Comic-Con. Doctor Who is dead over there.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
But that is what Gary and people like him are picking up on, and I believe that is the case. I trust Kyle with anything. He goes to a lot of conventions. Doctor Who probably is dead in America, but that doesn't mean that Doctor Who is dead, and it doesn't mean that it can't. The right creative couldn't turn that around, and the right sort of circus around it. The tide could turn on Doctor Who really, really quickly. I believe the kind of thing that JT was talking about a moment ago, Daniel, with the format. So you could excite an audience over a single weekend, just a whole format like that, rolling it all out, blow them away, and leave them wanting more. And Doctor Who is back on the map, and you could sell something like that internationally in a heartbeat. You could, and before you know it, there are new fans rolling in, having that experience you did, Charlotte.
Yeah. I mean, Daniel and Charlotte, we've had this experience because in 1989, Doctor Who was very much as it is now. It was laughable. I've often said it's very painful to see some of the choices that's coming up in the media now for any new Doctor, because it shows that they're not taking it serious. Just like in our day, it was going to be Ken Dodd, or it was going to be Paul Daniels, or lots of other people you probably wouldn't have heard of, and it was always ridiculed. It was absolutely ridiculed. It was just wrong people. But then it came back with Paul McGann. And suddenly the press were very much, oh my God, Paul McGann's Doctor Who. And then when it comes back, and in 2004, the BBC announced that Christopher Eccleston is Doctor Who. Big thing. The whole series was reinvented with those words. Christopher Eccleston is the 9th Doctor. I mean, it was just like reinvented. And that's why they got on board, because they were, well, if Christopher Eccleston's doing it, this must be serious. And that's what you can do again. And you just forget Chibnall. And you forget his nonsense, and you forget his left-wing rhetoric. You forget that incarnation of the Doctor, and you just go bang. But you have to have a serious name.
So who would you personally cast then?
Oh God. Oh, Daniel, how could you ask me that?
It's a lethal question.
Oh, it is a lethal question. The one that, oh my God, we've spoken about this. I'm a great believer there is a lot of British talent out there, and there's a lot of superb actors of all ages that I actually just genuinely believe, whether they're established character actors or they are brand new young character actors finding their way like Smith did, because Matt Smith, I will always say Matt Smith was a genius in that he's a character actor, and by God he's proving that point now with all the work he's doing now. He's just such a talent. There's a young man that comes to mind, and I can't remember his name, and I saw him in something, and I can't remember his name. It's a very bizarre sounding name. I don't know. I'll try and remember his name or what have you. But I think he would be quite good because he's got the look, and he's a good actor. I'll try and remember the name. Ask Dan who he'd cast.
I think, Daniel. I think there are a wealth of possible candidates for Doctors at the moment, more than one would think, and there are whichever model of the character you want to go. And if you want to go really heroic, outwardly heroic, classically heroic, or somebody who's a little bit quirkier, I would cast Luke Evans, the Welsh actor, as Doctor Who in a heartbeat. Daniel Rigby, I think he remains a really interesting young character. Well, I say young.
He's great. Yeah,
I really like him. Yeah. I love Adrian Lester. I think with Adrian Lester, I think it's partly as well because he really wants that part, and he is a bloody good actor. And I reckon he could deliver that. I think he could bring some intensity to it. I really like him. Who else? Who else has caught my eye lately? I mean, people do catch your eye, and there's a lot of people advocating for the Tom Ellises of this world. I think you should stay away from and Ian, if Ian's still watching, he'll hate me saying this. I kind of think that Tom Ellis is a little too David Tennantish, gangly and chiseled, and runs on it. And I think you should, if anything, stay
Daniel,
away from
what
somebody.
do you call him? What do you call him?
I call him just a pretty boy.
Yeah, Daniel
pretty boy.
Tom Ellis a pretty boy.
I think that's a little unkind, but I know what you mean.
I don't actually see the appeal of him, to be totally honest. I think he's
That's fair enough.
wrong for the part, to be honest.
That's absolutely fair enough. If you can't see that, because we all have our own interpretation of the Doctor, except for Jodie Whittaker. So it's a real case of can you see the magic? I mean, I hate to. Well, I don't hate to say this, but I saw Christopher Eccleston a few years before he did Doctor Who in the League of Gentlemen, and there's a particular shot where he's playing this character with a hat. And he was looking down at the camera, and I went, "That's Doctor Who." And I remember my flatmate at the time saying, "Don't be bloody stupid! They'd never get him to be Doctor Who." And I said, "Well, yeah, you could always put him in a Matrix-style leather jacket." And he went, "Don't be stupid."
Did you really say that?
I did. Yeah, no, yeah. That's it. Problem being, yes. Thank you so much for giving me the name.
That's who Problem wants.
Yeah. Oh, really? Well, we've got something in common there. He's a great talent. He really is. And I saw him. I think he played Richard III or something. I've seen him in a couple of things anyway. And it was just he captivated my interest, and I was engrossed in the performance and the physical move. So he's always stuck in my head as possible.
He's not too pretty either. I mean, obviously that's
Daniel. He's not too pretty.
He's got that ability to look quite sinister really quite quickly. And I think Matt Smith was a perfect example of that. He could suddenly go from looking like a 20-year-old man to looking like the oldest man in the universe.
How did he do that? How did he do that?
I have no idea.
It's true, isn't it?
Magical. Absolutely
yes.
magic.
Yeah.
I think Aidan Turner is another pretty boy who'd probably make a good Doctor Who, but yeah, I think he'd be really good. And I like Hamish Patel as well. I think he'd probably make a really good Doctor.
That's an interesting name. I've never thought of him in that. I'd have to think about that. Yeah, I've never thought about that.
Very comically gifted, and I think he seems sort of on the crest. I think he's on the threshold of hitting it quite big. He just needs the part. I think he'd be perfect for the Doctor. Yeah. So lots of prospects. But it's the question of will the BBC? It needs the right person to shine the torch into the right corner, because the BBC will not see it until it is literally right in front of their faces. It's extraordinary.
Because it's a bit.
Sorry, Charlotte. Let's be fair. Jodie was not picked for her acting ability.
No.
So
the very last consideration, that was the very last.
Yeah. So that's what I think. I think because there's a lot of fans who are struggling with that question right now. I've seen a few online when they're asked, they're a bit like, "Oh, I don't know." And I think if we were to sort of narrow it down, just pick somebody who just basically what the BBC needs to do is have an open audition, have no preferences, just have an audition.
Yeah, maybe.
If you want male or female, have it open for both, and then just whoever knocks the room out, who can ever just come in and say, "This is my Doctor." That's what Matt did, because he wasn't even Moffat's first choice, apparently. He just sort of came in and was that good. Moffat just went, "He's the Doctor." So we just need somebody who can just really get their teeth into. And I do think that's one of Whittaker's massive failings, that she's never properly got on her teeth into this role. She's never had the want to do it.
No, she's never had the want.
I love Charlotte that Matt Smith. I mean, because Stephen Moffat had his heart set on casting a much older Doctor.
Yes, he did.
That was his creative decision. He was convinced that that's what he was going to do. And the idea that and people say a lot of things about Stephen Moffat, and some of them are true and fair, and others I think are deeply unfair, and you couldn't possibly prove them. But I think the fact that the man, I won't say prejudices, but the choices that he had creatively already made in his head, he threw them out of the window when the right guy gave the right audition at the right time. He knew he'd got something special there, and put his own ego aside and cast absolutely the right man.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the brilliant thing about audition. I will actually go, again, I'm going to push this point. We have now proven that the Doctor is not a female character. It is a male character. It was devised as a male character. It has to be a male lead. I would certainly put it out there to say, right, and I wouldn't bloody well care about the feedback if I was in casting. I would say, no, it's a man. End of story. What's your problem? But it'd be interesting to see how many would come through the door and what they could do with a script and a little bit of a prop to be able to say, right, how do you interpret this character? And obviously, when you're going for that role, you get certain breakdowns, don't you? So you've got one where you're dealing with a monster, you've got one where the bomb's about to go off, you've got another one where you're giving a monologue, and you've got another one where you're facing off against a supervillain, as it were, usually played by Janet Fielding. But, you know, kidding. No, I love her. But you've got all this element, and that's how I would certainly do that now. I would make it no, we're going back to a male, and we want to see actors.
Well, no, I do think we were talking about the general audience. I think a lot of the general audience, if they see another female, they're just going to think, oh, you're repeating the same mistake again.
Possibly. I think a lot of us as fans will. I mean, I certainly wouldn't go back. And I think, you know, the danger we've got now is, as Daniel and I have said before, is that we do have a certain element of fandom now that were only there because they are alleged activists, you know, the multicolored hair brigade, who are just horrible. They are horrible, nasty people. And part of me, I have to say, has really got some sort of cheap thrill after seeing a lot of them over the last few days squirming on Twitter. Oh, it's but what they've put all us through as original fans, what comes around goes around. You don't deal with it. I mean, come on.
How many times have I've been told to leave the fandom several times over, Daniel? You know? And you think, well, who, you know, by complete strangers on Twitter or Facebook, it's well, okay, well, about
I know Gen Z. I mean, Gen Z need a good spanky. You know, if I had children and they were in Gen Z, there's no way they'd be turning like some of them spoiled brats you get on TikTok and stuff now. I mean, where the hell? But unfortunately, they were invited in, weren't they, by Chibnall and Whittaker? And I guarantee you, if we all get to meet at some sort of big convention, the multicolored unicorn loving brigade won't be there.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but that's the thing. They're already saying they're going to go if it doesn't go their way. And it's just so funny. That's what I find them funny as well. It's like
I'd like them to stay, but I'm not going to weep.
I don't. I don't want them to stay because they've been genuinely very, very nasty, and that's not what Doctor Who fandom is about. You know, piss off and go and watch something else, like EastEnders or something. You know, because they have
Batwoman. How about that?
Well, I've never seen that, and I don't intend to. But you know, but I would like them to leave the fandom because they're not fans, and they've been very vicious and they've been very nasty. And genuinely, as fans, okay, yeah, occasionally we do disagree with each other, but we actually all tend to make up, as these shows prove. And you guys have been guesting on lots of different shows and all that sort of stuff, and that's brilliant. And that's around the world. And I just don't think this small section that came in with the invite from Whittaker and Chibnall are truly representative of what we're about.
Not at all. Tiny fraction.
Oh yeah, and it just makes me laugh also. It's like, guys, you do know what show you came into, right? Where like the actor at a point leaves. Like it's not like she was going to stay forever. I don't get it.
She did give that quote a little while ago, didn't she, Daniel? It was only around a year ago where she said she felt that she'd barely got started in the role yet, and all sorts of things. But you know, I think that just goes to show what people will say on a given afternoon to Vox magazine or whatever when they stick a microphone under their nose. They can say all sorts of things, and some of the fans out there take it all as the absolute gospel. No,
it's true.
You know, regardless of what other people, her superiors, may have in mind, or what she really thinks. Because actors, like a lot of performers, you know, and I've worked in the creative arts all my career, so I know a lot of people who work in these fields. A lot of them, I hate to say this, will pretty much say whatever they think you want to hear, and you know, because they're performers, and the bit of themselves that they share to the world is largely a projection of only a side of them. Because I think that's the healthy way to live that life too, because there's only so much of your actual self that you can give. And I think the actors that do give too much of themselves, JT, they tend to suffer with their mental health and with the boundaries to their lives. So I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, but I think that there's people in the audience who aren't aware of that and maybe hold them to unreasonable standards, even complete loafs like Jodie Whittaker. It's a universal thing.
It's actually, sadly, as well, as we now know, the safer way to be, isn't it? Because if you do something which is deemed to be out of line, as John Barrowman, amongst many people, have recently found, you're going to be instantly cancelled, which is absolutely outrageous. I can't be done with this cancel culture nonsense. I mean, everybody has done things in their past. I mean, I keep saying, you two won't know this, Daniel and Charlotte, but back in the 90s, we actually had a laugh. And it was a riot. And there was this sort of cult going around between women called the Ladette. And they were playing the boys at their own game. And the Ladettes were absolutely I was there with the Ladettes. I loved those women. I was out partying with them all the time. But I tell you something right now, the younger people now, if they could time travel back to the 90s and see the actions of the Ladettes, they'd have heart attacks because those girls were getting their boobs out every 20 minutes. And that's when this whole thing about John came through. I just thought, right, are you going to go back now and find all the women that were doing that, including certain people that are being paid quite a lot of money now by the BBC to host various shows?
Yes.
And there are certain actors who have been in Doctor Who of the female variety who were also there in the 90s. And I've seen my share of celebrity boobs, not just John's, but it's shocking, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? But you missed that. You two missed out. It was a real party, by the way. That's why my memory's a bit of a blur. I know Problem Beings in watching the show in the chat today. He would have been he would have had similar experiences with the Ladettes, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I do think that the venom against John has taken a lot of us aback. Like, we're used to the sort of, like you said, cancel culture, but it's like whatever he does now, he gets attacked, and it's just like, why? He's apologised.
Charlotte, if I was John's boss at the time, I'd have given him a bollocking as well. But that's the end of
that's a very poor choice of words.
But yeah, I would. I think it was. I do think it's probably out of order when you've got a job of work to get on with. But as far as I'm concerned, it was dealt with there and then. The man, when it did sort of become a little more public, he also made an apology, which he wasn't obliged to do. And unsurprisingly, my view is that 10 years on, you would be really confused as to why people were bringing this up again, and particularly as somebody who has been so progressive in his outlook, so publicly LGBT and all that kind of thing. He's I think from what I remember of the Russell T Davies era, Captain Jack, that character, and John Barrowman himself, his personal qualities, did a lot for gay people, for young gay people who maybe would realise they were gay and then saw that character on television, out and proud, whatever you want to call it, and had the courage to tell their family or tell their friends or come out and live a full gay life. And I was still hearing stories like that up until probably 3 or 4 years ago about that man and that time. And now all of a sudden, and I would imagine that people would have told John, would have gone up to him maybe at conventions and said, thank you, your visibility really helped me. Not necessarily in a showy way, but on a deeply personal level. Who knows? And for him to be on the receiving end of all of this, it must be really hard. And I think I got the impression that John's really struggling mentally at the moment. And my heart goes out to this guy. It really does.
Well, he's getting attacked left, right, and centre, isn't he?
Yeah, the guy can't say right. It's awful.
And see, the thing that annoyed me is because I was actually looking forward to the audio that was just about to come out that John Barrowman
yes.
but it got them in the big finish and had to remove it due to the hate mob, basically.
And they caved in like that. They caved in less than an hour when somebody came at them on Twitter.
Yeah, and I think another thing, that's what you were saying, Dan, the importance of Jack. in Russell's era, you could tell he wanted to have different types of characters that might not have been as visible previously in the show. Let's put it that way. And you can tell John was all like the character of Jack was almost. I got the impression even then was Russell sort of trying to give a voice to a group, and like John's very sort. But this is what I'm gonna say. But it was done in the right way because Jack was a fully flashed character. He wasn't just there to say, "Look, aren't we brave?" He started off as a con man. You actually saw him change throughout the run of the Russell era, and you saw an actual character that you actually grew to care for, and that's what this show's always had, and that's what
that's why
it needs to have now. But it has cardboard cutouts.
I love that cardboard cutout. That's why Jack was popular. I'm going to say here as well, Daniel and Charlotte, what I'm going to say about that whole thing is I think Russell was absolutely 100% wrong to bring this element in. I mean, Jack, the whole thing about Jack is he was a human from the future and would shag anything. It doesn't matter whether it was human or if it was an alien. It was Russell's stamp really to be able to say, well, in the future, humans would have evolved enough. They would have been out in the universe. I personally don't like that essence in Doctor Who. I think that belongs to soap opera technique where you're going into the character's sexuality and all that sort of stuff. So I actually watched that when it was broadcast in 2005, and I was uncomfortable. Just the same way I was uncomfortable then when Amy Pond jumped the bones of the 11th Doctor a few years later. I was not comfortable with any of that.
I had my doubts, but because the show was also new, you sort of because there were so many other things that we knew, Daniel. I thought, well, this is coming with it too. This sort of very. I don't think it was necessarily sexualized, but it was definitely content and a side to characters, to regular cast members that we'd never even considered really before. So I do relate to what JT is saying.
Well, Russell's obsessed. I mean, that thing he did in the lockdown, we had those lovely. Well, I say lovely stories. They were just stories, which They were
well meant, weren't they?
They were meant well, but they were lovely, well meant stories, and they were just utter nonsense. But then Russell, of course, Daniel brings out that one which is about Sarah Jane, which I was annoyed about because in my world, Daniel, I don't know about you, but in my world, Sarah Jane is still alive. She's out there having adventures with K9. To kill her off in the fiction of it, I didn't like. Yeah, but then you've got all these things because again, Russell's going on about this thing about Tegan and Nyssa. Oh, piss off, Russell! Piss off! Can two women not be friends, Daniel? Can they not just be two mates? Like Nyssa and Tegan were mates, and then you've got all the rainbow-coloured hair weirdos, the fans we were talking about before. Woo! They're all let's go! Woo! Oh, bugger off, Russell, and shut up.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And like, to be honest, it doesn't actually need to go down that road because that's how and it kind of did annoy me that story because I was really looking forward to it, and then I read that but I'm like pissed off. I'm not reading it anymore.
Well, no, but what also was a bit annoying is that he didn't need it also because Luke was already known to have that sexuality in the show. So he basically, that wasn't just a new invention.
Was that established in Sarah Jane? I don't know if Luke's sexuality was.
I think it was, but in a very kind of.
I can't remember now.
And then series 5, it was only be reviewed that would tell Sarah Jane that he was actually a character if the series had continued, but unfortunately we all know what happened in the production of series 5, so we only really got half a series and we only got half that series. We never got to find all that out until it was written in the Doctor Who magazine a few years ago about the stories that they were still on the air if the show had continued, but
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we never got the end to that whole character arc.
But that's my point. He already had a really lovely bit that was enough. That was a lovely touching moment. But then it just, for me, that felt a bit cheap, actually, him doing that Tegan and Nissa thing.
Oh, don't. It makes me sick.
No, but that's the thing, because it wasn't the actresses. He didn't get the actresses to come and say a line. He had somebody else basically declare it for them. And I was that's cheap.
It was cheap. He just wrote it, Charlotte, didn't he? He just wrote it. I mean, he even sent off K9 with Dorothy, aka Ace, which isn't going to happen, which wasn't going to happen. It's not right. How would Ace and K9 match? I mean, it was just nonsense. The whole thing. It was just silly. And I just thought, oh, stop it, Russell. If you were going to do something like that, do it with respect rather than taking off all these little tick box elements. I was really disappointed in Russell T Davies on that story. I tell you what, Daniel, as well with the Sarah Jane Adventures, and I'm going to have to go back and rewatch it. There's a great excuse to catch up again with the Sarah Jane Adventures, because I don't remember this thing about Luke being gay. Not that I mind, of course, but I don't remember it. But we were robbed of because of what sadly happened with Liz. That whole story arc about Skye being a trick from the trickster. Wouldn't that been amazing? I would have loved to have seen that as Sarah unveils this adopted daughter as a trick, the ultimate trick from the trickster. That would have been fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, I used to tune in every Monday night when it aired. I remember actually tuning in to see every episode on an initial broadcast, and I think I've actually seen every episode about 15,000 times.
He's a bit of a fan.
Quite right too. Daniel, what's your favourite SJA adventure then? What's your favourite episode?
Probably either the Nightmare or the Empty Pillow.
Yeah, brilliant.
I can't remember the titles. I can just remember the episodes, and I think mine was when I don't know what it was called. When the trickster first got introduced, and he put her in like a false universe, or
it was very effective.
That's called Whatever Happened to the Sarah Jane.
That's right. That's the one.
Yeah, because was there also another one where she met her parents? Am I mixing them up?
That's the temptation of Sarah Jane Smith. Because that happens in this, because that happens in this second series, because that's the episode after because that's the episode after Kill, right? Gets united with his dad in the episode before it.
I can remember Elizabeth's performance in that, and that really touched me. When it came to meeting the parents and sort of, she really played it heartbreaking. Like you could see she almost wanted to stay and wanted to sort of have that, but she knew because of the doctor and because of all her adventures that she couldn't have that. And it was Elizabeth was just so good in that episode. That's why I remember that one as well.
Oh, she was good no one knew Sarah Jane. Oh, what's this? No one knew Sarah Jane like Liz. So what's this from Problem Being? Black Glove Studios will be releasing that final SJ story in audio, and you're in it. Really?
Yeah.
Where do I get that? Type that up. How do I hear this? I'd be very interested.
They've made them all, haven't they? Problem Being.
It's a YouTube channel called Gill of studios that do audio productions.
Oh well, thanks, Daniel. I'm gonna go and listen to that, because I know you and Charlotte are big on the audios. You'll know very well that I'm very picky about audios for many reasons. But you know.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to come on to.
Oh,
What is
Oh,
it?
hello. I've opened a can of worms. Go on, Daniel.
Like, like I don't really understand this like finish audios. Can you explain it to me because I can't personally find them enjoyable.
Yeah. As you're my pal, I'll explain a wee bit about it. I mean, when Big Finish started over 20 years ago, in '99, I was there, Daniel.
Yeah.
And one thing I never show on this is the Big Finish collection, which is hidden in the corner over there. Because I actually do like the audios. I mean, I go back, obviously, you guys know this. I go back to Genesis of the Daleks on a soundtrack vinyl thing. And by that, I mean, guys, it's a sort of round, disky thing. But I also, the Pescatons is still a favorite for me today with Tom and Liz. I loved the Pescatons. It scared the crap out of me when I was little. I must have been about 5 or 6. I nearly wore my dad's record player out because it was on every night. I remember one night my mum's actually saying, "Would you turn that off?" And I would listen to it in the dark and it would scare me. But with Big Finish, they came about in 1999, and I was there with the Sirens of Time. And back then, we would get about 3, possibly 4 a year, at $13.99 a disc, and I was there for them. And I was one of a lot of fans that were around.
Me too.
To do that, and I do have a lot of them. I stuck with them for many years. I stuck with them even past the awful Zagreus, which bored the tits off me.
God, that's a horrible one.
Look at him, he's gone.
Absolutely terrible.
I've never actually finished that.
That's the correct answer, Daniel.
To be honest.
Well, I got past that one, even though it was terrible. And it's what I would call fanwank. Yeah. And then I got into the Paul I mean, I was very excited when Paul McGann came on. And that first Paul McGann series, I thought was brilliant. You were getting 1 a month. So we had 4 in January, February, March, April. Yeah. And to hear Paul with India Fisher, she liked me. That was brilliant. And we had the Cybermen in that first one. We had the Stones of Venice. And then we had the Brig. The almighty Nick Courtney coming in at the end for Minuet in Hell. Yeah. And that was great. And I followed all this. But it got to a point where they were getting a little bit... they were getting a little bit cheeky. Now, back in the day in 1999, all the Doctor Who independents, like 10th Planet, which some of us will remember, like Galaxy 4, thank you, PD Rich and Problem Being for all the bits there. I'm going to look at that. Thank you. And like other independent retailers who had seen Doctor Who fans write with the merchandise that came out through the Wilderness years, they changed the process where Big Finish said eventually, right, we're not going to send you the stories direct. We're going to open them out from our own website and people will have to come to us to order them now. Now, from a business point of view, as a business person, I get that. I understand why they were doing that because it was ka-ching, 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 ka-ching money in the till. However, it did have an effect on the very loyal customers in these other places like the Who Shop, Galaxy 4, 10th Planet. Now, 10th Planet and Galaxy 4 are no longer around. Galaxy 4 folded after 20 years in the business. 10th Planet, I think, we're quite far down the line as well. The only one we've still got now is the Who Shop. But part of that attitude towards people I knew that had set up and worked hard in these shops and supplied a service to Doctor Who fans who had supported this company.
Yeah, supported that product from day one, hadn't they?
From day one.
I remember.
I was very bitter about that, I'll be honest. And I know life's too short to be bitter, but I was, and I still am, because it affected a regular income coming into my friends that were running these businesses. Since then, of course, they've managed to piss me off in several other ways. The James Dreyfus thing, outrageous behaviour. How dare you do that by bending the knee just because of the Purple Rinse Rainbow Brigade? They've done the same now with John, although the difference between the two is that they will get John back, just quietly. Yeah. Probably next year when things are quieting down a wee bit, but they won't go back to Jim. And that annoys me. The double standards. I don't like double standards at all. And this is one of the reasons, apart from the fact that I think they got overconfident and that the product was too much and that it was too expensive. That's one of the reasons I don't support them anymore, and I don't particularly like them.
Saturated now, undoubtedly saturated, and I think they're heading for a point where they could make it unsustainable. I think there could be a crash with all this, where even the people who, even their most dogged of subscribers, just reach a point where they either run out of money or get so confused with what's coming out when that it just blows your mind. Something shorts out, and you start thinking, "Oh well, I'll pass up on that title." And then and if that happens to enough people, potentially over a longer period of time, then your business kind of really does suffer. I'm very sympathetic to JT's point of view on this. I mean,
Yeah, no, I think it can be like that because I was new. I bet the reason I got into Big Finish was basically because the show I couldn't watch it, so I was like, I still want I still want to have something Doctor Who, and like, and before I'd listen to some fan stuff, but even though fans, God love them, you can only do so much. So I listened to Big Finish, so I could have that touching point. And then the more I started looking into it, I was just like, where do I start?
You've got to remember, Charlotte, who Big Finish are and where they started. They started in bedrooms as fans.
Yeah, they're us.
Yes, except now, of course, there are certain individuals associated with that company who are better than us, because they've made it up there. And I've seen this happen with various people. There's a certain actor stroke writer that would speak to me and my pals back in the 90s willy-nilly, and then made it to a particular point and won't acknowledge us now because they're too grand, obviously, to meet with commoners like us. And I just can't be done with that attitude either. You guys started in a bedroom in the 80s. Yeah. And your material was crap, and your writing was crap, and some of it still is, I believe. And it's a real case now of just saying you've forgotten your roots, and don't you treat fans like idiots, and don't be listening to certain elements of who you think are fans and who aren't fans. Look at the bigger picture. Look at the ones that will sustain you when the show comes off air again. I think next year is going to be very, very, very interesting.
Very telling, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, for them.
It's ironic, isn't it, that characters like that exist? I know exactly who you're talking about. Characters like that exist, and yet somebody, the cast members, the legends, the true legends, Liz never got like that. Sophie's not like that. The class acts who know the score, know their audience, and it's strange that the people who are on screen, who are the stars of Doctor Who, are largely, I won't say all of them, largely have remained kind of grounded about it. I mean, certainly the ones that I've met, I've had some lovely experiences. I know that everybody can have their off days and all that kind of thing, and I've heard some stories. But largely, they're human beings at the end of the day. But
that's the thing I always remember about meeting so-called celebrities. I mean, I've been very lucky, Scottish Davros and Charlotte, in that I've been a Doctor Who fan for such a long time. I've been to conventions since I was about 13. In 1983, I think was my first convention. And I've been very lucky. I've met a lot of people that are not around with us now. For example, the magnificent Nick Courtney for me was a giant, and he wasn't star driven in any sort of way. And the first time I met Nick, I was one of those wee boys that was like that. Well, I say wee boy, I must have been I must have been about 16, 17 or something like that, maybe earlier. But what happened with that thing, it was Matthew behave. What happened with my when I first met Nick was that I'd missed him at a signing table at a convention. And I was like, I can't believe I've missed Nick Courtney. And I was actually gutted. And it must have come out because one of the then fans who was the attendees or whatever you call them now, wait a minute, he took my book, and I was delighted because he took my book. He said, I'll go and get your autograph. And in those days, we didn't have to pay for this. But the book came back with a request to come into the green room. And that was the first time I'd ever been in a green room. And in there was Katie Manning, Elizabeth Sladen, Lou Jameson, Nick Courtney, and Nick came over and he had a glass of something in his hand, and he said, this is the young man that missed me, and he signed my book, and I've still got it, it's over there. And we had a chat, and then John Pertwee came in, and I'm crapping myself because these legends for me are all around me. But that was my first introduction to that, and it's totally different to where it is now with some of them, because now you get charged an awful lot of money for an autograph. And I keep thinking to myself, hang on a minute, I know that's supplementing your income, and fair enough, but this is your fan base. We never used to do this. Where's this come from? And actually, you're going to end up dead. So get a little bit of perspective here. You know,
I can't imagine Nick Courtney. I think I met him twice, and similar experience. He was sat down when I got led towards him to have whatever signed, and he seemed he was the Brig. The way he speaks just like the Brig. Very, very posh man. Very, you know. But then he stood up, physically a very big man as well.
Yeah.
And think, wow, the charisma of that guy. And yet he was the sweetest, and he knew exactly how we were all feeling. So really, really warm.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine people like him charging for autographs.
I don't think he would have allowed it. There are certain people around now today. Bob Baker is one of them. Bob Baker, the writer, creator of K9, he doesn't like charging the fans for the autograph. He thinks it's very cheeky. And a lot of people will say, well, how much? And he'll say, well, as long as they're buying a book, I'm not charging extra. You know, and he doesn't really like that, you know, and if somebody comes up to him saying wherever and says, oh, hello, Mr. Baker, blah, 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 may I have your autograph? He'll go, yeah. That's that generation, you know, and I think we've mislaid that a wee bit now because they've suddenly realised I can make an extra few pennies on this, except it's not a few pennies, is it? I saw Christopher Eccleston's charging in the hundreds for his.
Madness.
Yeah, I mean, there's some stories of John Sim doing the scheme and stuff like that.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, fans actually they spend all the money and all the tickets and all the merchandise. And by the time you've all the stuff that you want to buy, your practically is and then you're expected to pay for a bill and a bit of
Well, it's true. I mean, I don't know if people do it now, and if anybody in the chat knows, please let me know. But we used to hang around after a play, and we used to hang around at the stage door, and that's where I got the likes of the gorgeous Mary Tam. You know, she signed another one of my books there. Who else did I see outside? Lou Jameson. Oh, there were loads of people, and they would come out the theatre knackered from a 2-hour performance, as I now know, which my younger self didn't really appreciate. But, you know, they would come out and there'd always be a group of Doctor Who fans. That's the other way we used to meet each other back in the day. You'd be hanging around dodgily in a side door around the back of a theatre, you know. The police would have a field day today. So, you know, we were all there with our books and stuff. And then these actors, the performers would come out and they'd be like, oh, hello. And they were usually brilliant. Oh, yes, of course, I'll sign that. I mean, what happens now? Do they say at the stage door, yes, that's 20 quid? I mean, what happens?
I don't know, but I think that's something that's quite, I think you said this on your stream, like, when it comes to being an actor in this show, for a lot of fans, you're not just your character. Or it's like we like to have that personal interaction as well as just seeing them on screen. Yeah. And I think that's very much a bit of the Doctor Who fandom. And I think that's sort of grown through the years as cons have got more popular and bigger. But I think in general, and I've been thinking about this, I think just the Doctor Who fandom is quite a social fandom anyway, and it's just sort of came about because of that. Because if there is one major positive from what's happened in the last couple of years, it's let me meet you guys. It's let me meet so many people who I never have interacted with, because we all just sort of felt like we needed to reach out and to talk or to.
Yes.
And it's like me and Daniel, we met through this era, and we sort of, that if there's one positive we'll take from it, it's that. And it's just that's one of the major positives. If they, I think that, and that is almost, because I think some people have been saying, "Oh, what's the legacy of the current era?" And in a weird way, to me, it's not the show. It's what I started doing because of it, almost. Because if you would have said to me 2 years ago, "Oh, you're going to be on YouTube," like you're going to be people, I would have gone, "No, you're crazy."
Yeah.
And it's just sort of, but I think that's a part of the fandom. It's such a social place, and that's what's lovely about it.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful, Charlotte, the way you've put that, and I think it's absolutely spot on. I mean, you know, as somebody of my age now, I wouldn't have thought I'd be going onto YouTube shows and connecting with more people from around the world now, because before Dan invited me onto Type 40, I was distancing myself because of the attacks that I'd continually had from fandom, which shocked me, because even when we disagreed over the casting of Sylvester McCoy or the half-human thing, we were never attacking each other, because that's not what we did. We would banter, which is not the same as an attack. So when I was suddenly getting called ridiculous things, which is just not me at all, misogynist, sexist, homophobe, racist, everything that I've stood against in my entire life, I just thought, this is actually ridiculous. So I was backing it away, and then Dan came along and said, well, actually not everybody's like that, and we talked, and then eventually I went on to Type 40 and realized what Dan was saying was correct, and that's where I've met you guys. I do get pangs of not panic exactly, but I do get pangs of, oh my god, when somebody mentions, oh, shall we go to a convention? Because I am quite worried about taking that step back into that real environment, because I am hoping, like I said earlier, that certain horrible element will disappear or not come to a convention, but I don't want to try it out, because I've actually lost friends who are older friends that I've had for quite a long time because of the casting of Whittaker and my opinion on it. Although two of them in the last couple of weeks have come knocking back on the door to say, how are you? So I've actually told them, obviously, go away. You know, if you're going to be that fickle, I don't want to know you 3 years later. But, you know, and I've been branded, as a couple of us have, as the wrong type of gay, because I didn't support what I call an unnecessary gender bend. So, because I don't, as you guys know, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a male character. If a character's an established male character, he's an established male character, you know, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I do worry about that element where how absolutely problem being, and there's the great element that I think that's where we've come from. Now we all know each other here, and we've all come from that. But I think there is going to be a divide we're going to have to work out, you know, because I've got visions of we're all going to be in a conference hall talking to Tom Baker or whoever, and we're all going to be on one side and they're all going to be on another. Do you know what I mean?
It does make you wonder. Yeah.
It's like Brexit, you know, that I'm sure you did, problem being. There's an awful lot. I follow problem being on Twitter, and there's an awful lot of parallels between his life and my life. I think we was moving in so similar circumstances through history. but I think that's one thing we've got to do. We were saying this on Type 40, and it's one of the things that I think we're all keen on as part of the Type 40 team, is to be able to, through the next year, especially in the lead up to September, October next year, is to make sure that we're trying to play our role, as I'm sure you guys will, in healing fandom and bringing the fandom back together and actually explaining how things work and how it was, and being optimistic enough to be able to say, well, if there is a new decision and if there is a new interpretation of our favorite character, we can deal with this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What do you think, Dan, about that sort of thing of healing and fandom and how we have to all sort of act a bit, in a way? It sounds a bit daft, but
like the man says, I mean, everything that JT's just said, I co-sign that to the letter. I did some conventions, and not for a long time. Haven't been to one for a while. I was thinking there was an event I wanted to go to this month, and I didn't in the end. But that was going to be my sort of return to that kind of environment. And the only reason I didn't in the end is because they kept changing the dates because of the pandemic and guidelines and things. And but I'm sure that I will go back to it eventually. But it's interesting because I hadn't heard, JT hadn't told me that about some. I was aware that the poor man had lost friends over this, and I know that it upset you. And and I've also been unfriended, but not so much by people that I'd known or for a long period of time, but more by people who reach out to me and want to get to know me. You think, well, if you reach out to me, if you friend me, you want to get to know me, you want to find out a little bit more about me, and then they find out one thing that you don't like, the casting of one example of casting in one telly show, and all of a sudden you're not worth knowing. You think, oh, okay.
Yeah, it shows that your relationship wasn't where you possibly thought it was, and it does hurt, doesn't it? It does hurt.
It's confusing, and it just makes you wonder where where the human race, where we're at, and it is a byproduct of social media, because making friends in real life was and is never like that. People, you persevere with people when you get to know them, even if you don't hit it up instantly. And I mean, I agree with everything that JT said, and certainly the ethos behind Type 40. Type 40 was conceived before this era kicked in, with this mindset. And my attitude towards it, right from when I was putting the project together with the Fandom Podcast Network to now, has always been the same. Based, even though we've had to weather this diabolical era, all this horrendously divisive content, no cooperation from the BBC themselves, and people, our peers, turning against us. I've tried to continue in the ethos at which Type 40 was conceived, and to continue to walk that line. And because I always knew that we would be around when Chibnall and Whittaker were gone. I never doubted that for a moment. And now we're heading into that. We're heading into that time now of the history of Doctor Who fandom. And I'm really, really excited about it. I'm excited about living through that time with people like yourselves, who I've only met during all of this, weathering this storm, and with the people that I've known for decades, who have largely... I think there are people out there I've known for a long time who do disagree with me, but have still agreed to disagree, and that gives me hope too. I think the majority of people are still like that, and I think lockdown proved that as well. I think what Emily Cook achieved initially with the lockdowns, until somebody cocked it all up. Paul, prove Daniel what the fandom can be.
And until Paul Cornell actually ruined it for everybody. Because the fandom was actually starting to come together again. And
that will happen now, Daniel. That will happen over a slower period, as the next era begins. Even if there's a big gap in the middle, that will happen again, because we have more in common with one another. This is the same with the human race. We have more in common with one another than separates us. Whether it be talking about the things like the innate characteristics like the color of one's skin, or just what we like about telly or not. Human beings are communal creatures. We want to share with one another. That's why we all do this. That Charlotte was talking earlier on. She never saw herself on YouTube. I imagine you didn't either, Daniel. And this certainly wasn't something I ever thought that I would do.
See, to be honest, it was because, of people like yourself, and obviously we over at the Target, so an official YouTube channel, all that who have kind of formed this friendship with. If it was him that encouraged me the most to actually start doing my own thing, to be honest.
Noel is a prime example of a proper Doctor Who fan. Heart of gold. Yeah, he's got a big gob, haven't you, mate? But he's got a heart of... Noel has a heart of gold, and he's been around just like JT and I have. Yeah. He was around on social media before all this kicked off. And he's a very loyal and supportive guy. It's the classic model of a Doctor Who fan. And I think that you guys who maybe haven't been around quite so long, and people out there, if you're a little bit disheartened and think that this will kill it all, what JT said is right. What Charlotte said is right. Stick around. This will all have been worth it in the end. I'm pretty certain.
I mean, that's what's actually great about this community as well, as a lot of different opinions and different sort of podcasts that are coming up right now. And I mean, everybody's doing their own sort of different spin on the fandom and stuff like that. I think that's more what's kind of keeping the show going right now, to be honest, because the actual show's not keeping everybody in the speed. It's people on YouTube.
Well, the fandom, Daniel. Traditionally, the fandom have always been the show's greatest publicists, haven't we, JT?
Oh yes, I mean, we were there in '96 when this thing came back. I remember where I was working at the time. They were all going on about, oh, your show's coming back. Your show, and yep, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. You have to watch it. It's going to be great. It's on the back holiday, and by God, people did, and people were coming in for days, weeks, saying, actually, I watched that thing, your show, and it was really good. It wasn't bad at all. And then the fuss when Eccleston started with that series. I think we were all banging the drum. We were doing our best to say, Doctor Who's back. We've got to watch this. I mean, everything about the run up to that show was great. The interviews were great on TV. The trailers were great for it. The variety of the trailers for it were exciting. The fact that you got to see the TARDIS, you heard the theme music. The British public knew what that was going to be, and by God, they tuned in for Rose and onwards. And again, it culminated with that. We've talked about this before. This special week in the Tennant era when we had that cliffhanger for the Stolen Earth and Journey's End, where the 10th Doctor seems to be regenerating, and everybody in the United Kingdom is suddenly coming up to me, every single one of the UK, who's the new Doctor? What's going on? And I'm like, there isn't going to be one. Calm down. It's fine. It's a trick. It's a trick. You have to watch it next week. But yeah, I mean, and as fans, we couldn't
bear not knowing.
No, but as fans, we've got we can support it, but we can also get rid of it.
And see, to me, I think even and it kind of stayed a bit wrong, in my opinion, because the last couple of specials usually weren't very good, and
did you not like them?
Well, no, because the last couple of specials kind of just felt a bit forced.
I think the problem was that Stolen Earth 2-parter was such an epic. Everybody was there. You had the Daleks. It felt like such a high, and I think whatever they were going to do after that was almost going to fail. And I think, and I think also it didn't help that when Tennant was going, even though the 10th Doctor was going in that final episode, he did sacrifice himself for Wilf, which is what the Doctor would do any day of the week. But it was that bit of, I don't want to go. I think some people were like, oh, come on, just please.
Yeah.
I mean, I still can watch Waters of Mars, Daniel, any time at all, quite happily. I think Waters of Mars is a great sort of, it's borderline scary story. I quite like that. And I don't get scared about it because I'm older. But I do know that my friends' kids, when they were little, I mean, they had nightmares over that. And I'm like, did they? That's brilliant. But, there's that. But again, the last 2 episodes were huge with the public. They were on Christmas Day, and then the week after on New Year's Day they were. Remember, we had those beautiful indents on the BBC as well, where the TARDIS is buried and he's on a. I mean, that we're never going to see the like of that again. Well, maybe we will if they get it right. But I'd like to say if I may, Daniel, to Enigmatic Joker in the chat. He said something there about trying to get to know the UK fans. This is a great way to do it. So follow us on all the channels and come and say hello to us as often as you possibly can and keep in touch with us. And Daniel's got a Facebook page which is highlighting all. It's like the Radio Times of Facebook, of all the of all the type, all the YouTube shows. That's how I look at that. It's quite funny. And then there is a Type 40 Facebook page. If you haven't found that yet, have a look at the Type 40 Facebook page, where a load of us are already on there. So if you want to come and meet with us, UK fans, you mad fool, then that's the way to do it. Oh, that's the way to do it.
Warmly received.
And I do think that's gonna, because the show probably we won't see it once they go the twosome for a little while. I think naturally a lot of fans are going to do that anyway. They're going to sort of reconnect almost, or they're going to sort of keep, like you were saying, this show is kept alive by the fan base. And as long as you have the fan base, this show's never going to completely go. It's the way I see
absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things is as well that there will be, at some point, there will be a sort of iconic handing over of the baton. And that's where you and Daniel and your age group come in very important to understand what Doctor Who is, and protecting it and supporting it. Because I always said, I'd be fine with a female Doctor as long as I was dead. Which meant do it when I am way gone and I don't know about it, and they've done it, now when I'm thinking, oh God, it didn't work. It's proven not to work. And now we've got to go through it again, but they will try other things in the future. And again, I would just say, please just do it long after I'm gone. So that, I'm not seeing the fact that the show's being harmed again.
Yep.
There you go.
I'm exactly the same. I think the whole experiment of a female doctor has failed, to be honest with you, because the ratings are so far in the toilet now, to be honest.
You can't argue with the figures. You can't. That's the one metric that will never let us down, everybody. It's irrefutable. And it doesn't matter how much broadcasting changes, iPlayers and this and that or the other, eyes on screen. That's count for everything.
And also the big one as well, with not just with ratings, but it's the sales figures. The merchandise through this period, as we all know, and as we all report to each other, is a massive failure. If you look at the character options lines, the ones that have been selling the best are the classic stuff. Yeah, the beautiful classic stuff.
Look at the excitement again this week over the censor rights box. And there are still people arguing on Twitter today. Why aren't there more Jodie Whittaker era figures? Well, why do you think? I could understand if we were talking 2 years ago, but we're not. We're
at the end.
3.5 years. Yeah, we are basically at the end of this ordeal.
We are at the end.
Why do you think they haven't made them, for Christ's sake?
Do you know what? This is what gets me about some of the Jodie fans as well. And if any of them come across this, please, we've got to you've got to understand, and let's get the word out to these people. They're all going on about next year as though they're filming next year. They're not. They're filming Jodie's last episode now. Yeah. She finishes, I think it's early to mid-September, isn't it, Dan? Yeah. That's when there's a golden wrap for Jodie on her very last episode. It's only broadcast next year. So we've got to get the word out to them to say, stop speculating about all this fan nonsense that you lot have got about her episode, because she's doing it right now.
Yeah, and the merchandise is already showing they don't want to show her. So
next year.
But here's the question in regards to the regeneration. Do you think that you actually see the 14th Doctor, or just think
I knew you were going to ask that. I knew you were going to ask that. You wee blah blah blah. The way I look at it is, I mean, Simon on Type 40 always says that you'll see the beginning of a regeneration and it will just cut off, and then that'll be that. I'm in two camps. I am not even sure you're going to see the beginning of a regeneration. I have a feeling that they might, just to get us all in there watching, and we're all going to be watching, and we're going to have Dan's party poppers on order and all this sort of stuff. I don't know. I think there might be an ultimate twist here to say, well, this is her last episode, but she does the Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred and walks off into the sunset with the companion, whatever her name is.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you know what I mean? And I think Chibbers may just do something like that. So I don't know, and quite frankly, I don't care. As long as they go, I don't care.
I don't. It's only just struck me. I couldn't give a flying. I don't care either.
Yeah.
There you go. What do you guys think?
I think it depends how close they are to casting a Doctor for when those episodes go out. I think if they know they've got no chance of casting, they could do what you said, JT, and just sort of, or literally have not even the start of the face. Sometimes they might show a bit of a hand or like a bit of something that isn't so hard to CG. They could do it that way.
I think what you've got to bear in mind as well is the practicalities of it. This is a fantasy world to us, and we love to watch it roll along and continue and invest in these characters. But to the people involved in the making of it, it's a job of work, and the actors included. And whilst they're attached to Doctor Who, a high-profile show like that potentially should be filming 3/4 of the year, they can't really. It sort of closes them off from taking other work, from being available for other work, and from people who may employ them in other jobs, believing that they're available. So if you think about if you were to sign a contract with an actor or actress right now, their episodes we know that they are not going to get on screen for the minimum of almost 2 full years, but they'll be attached to that part for that entire time. And before they're even on screen, no actor worth their salt, certainly no agent, more to the point, no agent who represents an actor is going to sell their client into a position like that. That's why there is absolutely no way they're going to film anything with a successor to Jodie Whittaker over this next few weeks, because they won't even look at inking somebody into that part. They're going to want to give themselves as long a period of time to get this potentially right as they possibly can, because they know the wheels have come off it. And so they're going to leave it as open as they possibly can, giving the people who may take it over that as much creative freedom as they can. But simply the fact that these are actors doing a job of work represented by agents, there's nobody is going to sign a contract for a job they're not going to be able to start on for 2 years.
Absolutely, and certainly they're not. No actor is going to take a role on right now when there's no production team in, because we do know that the current production team of Doctor Who are all going, which is something I've been calling out for over a year. But they are all going. So it needs to.
Cybermat's saying on the screen, could it be cancelled? Cancelled is a very charged word, but it has effectively been cancelled. Yes,
it is.
It's been taken out of production, which is a softer way of saying cancelled. This is an IP though, so it's different to the average show.
Absolutely. I mean, we will know in the next few months more about what's going to happen. Daniel, I don't know if you've heard about this, but there are things happening in BBC Wales. There are certain things. We have just lost Holby City. There are rumours that Casualty is being possibly shifted. Now, I've also heard this week that there's a possibility that Doctor Who may move from BBC Wales. And it might actually benefit us, Scottish Stavros, because in the frame, of course, is BBC Scotland, who need a hit. Let's face it, because Daniel, you know yourself, they have got nothing. They don't contribute anything to the United Kingdom BBC at all. So if they got Doctor Who suddenly, that would be a feather in their crown.
So by all means, BBC studios come up here. Come up here and make it easier for me to go and visit the sets and whatnot. So
absolutely.
So
I think it'd be a great thing for Doctor Who.
So I think I speak for all the Scottish and who fans and say, brother, I need to.
Woo! I'm up for that, Daniel. I mean, it would be brilliant, because what the other thing we've got up here at the moment is we've got loads of tax breaks for films. That's why we've got Batman and The Flash and Indiana Jones and something else coming to Glasgow in the next couple of weeks, I hear, as well. We've got all these tax breaks going on for the cut, because they really want to push the creative industry up here, because it's there, but it's not collected. Plus, we've got all the scenery, we've got proper police boxes, we've got some real I mean, it could be fun. And also, can you imagine if they ever brought back an exhibition, Daniel? We wouldn't have to pay a bloody fortune to get to Wales.
My fingers are crossed for you, gentlemen. My fingers are crossed.
Same here.
I mean, because I remember the Elvin Grove exhibition about Elvin Grove exhibition, and it was a fantastic layout. So
it was as well. I'll just explain to the people watching. The Kelvin Grove exhibition was the touring Doctor Who exhibition in the Tennant era. And it was the one that started in Blackpool in 2005, and it went around the country. So I think a lot of places got it. But when it came to Kelvin Grove, which is this beautiful historic art museum in Glasgow in the West End. They laid it out. It was I mean, I went to several of those places on that tour and followed it around. I went to Manchester, I went to Brighton, I went to London, I went to somewhere else bizarre. Where was it? Nottingham or something? I can't remember. But I went around quite a bit. Yeah, I went quite around a really bit. And when I came into Kelvin Grove, because they had all this ornate Victorian architecture and space, the way the designers have put out it was just beautiful, a real thought. And they'd shown off what they could do with these costumes and props and their own talent of being able to do. It was just stunning, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, but that's something we're missing, isn't it? Because I went to Cardiff, the Doctor Who exhibition. Is that what it's called? I can't remember.
The experience. Yeah.
Sorry. And I went there, and it's somewhere I'd always wanted to go, and it was in Cardiff. So it's like, if I look at trains, I can do this. And my best mate, who doesn't watch anymore, but she's a massive Doctor Who fan, we both went, and it was such an incredible day just for me to see some of those costumes. And also to have the little interactive thing, which also the timing was good because Matt was doing the interactive bit at that time. So my doctor was saying, come and have an adventure.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And it was just, and I so would hope in a couple of years, or if that could be another thing the show could get back, if it gets a new production team.
It has to be popular again.
Yeah,
it has to be popular again because the public did go to the experience. Again, you know, if you're outside the UK, you won't understand this, but the Doctor experience in Cardiff was massive. It was based just across the road from Rothlock, where they do Doctor Who, and it was huge. And it was open 7 days a week, most of the year, and it was busy practically every day because the British public would come down and join the Doctor Who fans, and it was every day for as long as that was going. It was busy. It was busy. It was busy. I keep trying to say to people now, if you had it now, nobody would be going because the fan base wouldn't necessarily be going. The public certainly wouldn't be going to look at all the Chibnall stuff, you know. And it's got to be huge again to justify investment in something like that again. But you guys are lucky because you grew up in the age of where the exhibitions didn't have glass between you and the pro.
No,
I mean that's one thing I couldn't get over.
Close.
I couldn't get over this when I went to the exhibitions and the costume was actually there. I was always like, oh my god, you can. Oh my god! Because when we were kids in Blackpool and Longleat, there was glass between us and everything, so you couldn't. And I remember touching some of the costumes, going, "Oh my god, you can touch this thing! This is brilliant! Look at this!" Which outside of a convention you weren't allowed to do. It was very brave of them. But there you go.
Well, I think they were sort of sanctified items to us. We were no likely to harm them than they would. I think we respected. They were like relics almost. And but it was surprising to me though because you were getting snotty-nosed kids with ice creams and stuff running around going, what is that? What is that? You know what I mean? And grab your hands off that, you creep. You know.
It's like leave the Facebook alone. Leave it.
Yeah. Don't touch John Barrowman's nose, or get off Tom's scarf. Don't do that to K9's ears.
Happy day.
Yeah, it was really good days, that one. But there you are. So
yeah.
And obviously Charlotte eats her own cheese.
I don't think if JT knows this.
Well, oh God, go on, tell me.
And and she writes her own of her speeches from my mum. That's another person who. So would you like to read one of your speeches?
Absolutely. Is this? Do you do this at the roundup of every show? Is this when you're closing down the show? Do you do a speech like this? Do you do a monologue?
Well, no. It was the anniversary. And I was I saw a lot of people because the time was children were still hitting and we hadn't heard the news. And I just thought, let's have a go at writing something because it was just sort of a spur of the moment thing. And I did put it on the Spacebooks as a sort of a test. I sort of put it there and it was and I had it. My idea was to fix Whittaker's never happened. What if Capaldi's doctor's just been on an adventure for the last 4 years and we've just not seen him? And I had this idea of the Doctor would leave a message to the Earth so they don't panic. So I wrote it as Capaldi. And then I've done like one is Chris, because I just sort of had the moment for it. And I thought, I was actually talking with Daniel, and I sort of said to him, we have to have hope. And it got me an idea for something like 11 would say. So I've had a go at writing a proper scene. So this is a bit more than a speech. So let me just try and get it so I can see it. Right.
Very good.
So let's see what you think. So the TARDIS stood quietly with only soft hums filling the console room. The usual ramblings of the Doctor nowhere to be found. This is disturbed by a set of small footprints followed by a, "Come on, how many corridors do you need?" Amy Pond stands looking around, her eyes searching around the room. The TARDIS hums in response, making her come closer to the centre. She starts to flick some switches, saying, "You wait, he'll come running now." She laughs, teases. She then adds, "You're a team now, though, I understand," she says while touching her left hand. "I mean, he needs someone to look after him." "Who wouldn't want that?" she adds. She then turns around, leaning on the console, and is quiet for a few minutes. "You wouldn't know to look, though. Never has a smile off his face," she says with a small laugh. She then asked, "Is that a Time Lord thing? Hiding how you really feel?" Amy's musings are stopped as a panicked voice comes charging into the room. "Pond, how many times have I told you?" the Doctor blisters in while pressing multiple buttons. Amy raises an eyebrow, saying, "We're not crashing, so what's the problem?" The Doctor stops and looks at Amy, then the TARDIS, saying, "This is very delicate and complex machinery. You can't just press buttons. It could do anything," he says, arms flailing around him. Okay, I won't do it again. I just wanted to go somewhere," she says back. The Doctor takes a few minutes to look at Amy. Sorry, I'm very prepared, you can tell. Yeah. Then says, "But just come on. I want to do something." The Doctor then says, "But we just came from Vincent." He moves closer to her, saying, "I thought we were due a rest," he says quietly. Amy moves away, saying, "Well, I'm done with resting," with her voice raising slightly. The Doctor grabs her hand while saying, "We will. I just want to show you something first." He takes her to the doors and swings them open. He then points out with a grin, saying, "What do you see? Tell me." Amy stares out then and tells him, "It's just space. Big, black space." The Doctor grins, fades for a second before returning with him clearing his voice. He then says, "Technically, you're right, but it's so much more. For thousands of years, you lot, you've looked up and created gods and myths from that night sky. They captured your imagination for a reason. Maybe it's because you could even see it then, that space is darkness, but if you just keep going, you find such brilliant light." Amy turns to the Doctor, saying, "It's not just humans they've captured then." Whilst looking him straight in the eye. The Doctor holds her gaze, then shuts the door, rushing to the console room. "So all of time and space, and everything that ever was or will happen, where do you want to start?"
Wow.
That's my
Well
go at
done,
a scene.
I like that. And you know, I was going to say, Daniel, I always like to have a bedtime story before I go to bed, and nobody will ever do it for me. So that's actually fantastic. So I really appreciate that. That's brilliant.
Yeah,
There's a lightness of touch to your writing, Charlotte. I
I
always enjoy
never
it when you put it in
be
the
saying Charlotte was showrunner in the
Yes.
It was an idea about hope, and I just thought, considering what the stream's called and what we're going through in the fandom, we all need a bit of hope. So I thought
absolutely
the
we
would
do.
be good for that.
We do. Well put.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well said.
No, great.
Thank you so much for inviting me, guys. I've really enjoyed it.
And so just the really where the channel shout out, so we'll start with Charlotte, because she's the co-host. So for whose channel are you on this week?
And he always says this, like everywhere. Well, I'll be at the weekend on Classic and New Who with Noel and the TARDIS Zone. And when this, I can't point. When this one wants, God, I can't use cameras. I can't point.
That
when
one?
the fella next to me invites me on, I appear on the Facebook.
Yes.
Oh God, I can't even remember what his name is. Charlotte.
Well, now it's Dan's
It's easy to forget.
And so, have you got anything coming up in your channel this week?
I haven't. I've got to be honest. No, we do. Oh, what am I talking about? Tomorrow? Yes. Okay, we're Wednesday night tonight. So I'm not actually recording anything for a couple of days. So I'm taking a little bit of time off because I've got work to do about this place. But tomorrow night on the Spacebook channel, more Doctor Who talk, believe it or not. It's Type 40. It's a video we recorded a little while ago, a few days ago, and it's just called Unlocked. And it's myself and Simon Horton, we mentioned him earlier on, with two, not just one, two special guests from the worlds of Doctor Who. One of them has been in Doctor Who fandom since the 70s, late 70s, I think. I hope that's right. And he's got a brand new project coming out. So there's him and somebody else who's been on the show before, who's always a good giggle. So they're launching something exclusively, which is about to be released. They're going to tell us all about it on the Spacebooks channel tomorrow night, 9 o'clock UK time. So look for Type 40 Unlocked, and all will be revealed. Other than that, go over there and subscribe to the channel, and then you'll see our Type 40 live streams too, and you'll get the notifications about when we're going to do it next, what we're rambling on about next time. Thank you both for the invitation. I hope we've given you what you needed.
Yep. And JT, have you got anything coming out on YouTube or?
Well, I've got a movie and an album and a book. I've got a brand new series, Daniel. No, I'm kidding. No, I'll be. I'm not as wide variety as you lot are, but I'll be on Type 40 Live Tuesday from 4 o'clock, spouting all the usual stuff that I spout. And of course, the brilliant thing about that is that we will be able to update, of course, if any news is breaking, then we'll be breaking it there or discussing it there. Yeah. So, but again, like Dan says, thank you so much. It's lovely to see you both and to be on your show. And thank you very much for the invite. I know I've been invited a couple of times, but work's always clashed, so it's great to be able to come on. And I'm just so glad you didn't ask me anything about Line of Duty, because I know absolutely nothing about Line of Duty.
I was kind of dreading that. I don't want any spoilers for that show. And also, whilst I remember, and whilst we've got JT here as well, I mean, you may not have known this, but a few months ago, I had a major tech problem over on my channel, and it limited what I could make, how I could make it. We're back at full pelt now, and so the content is going to evolve over the next between now and when Series 13 comes on. So the idea is we're going to take the Type 40. It's all about making the Type 40 brand bigger and better every time. And so you'll see what we mean in a few weeks' time, all being well, which means that, there'll be more content, more opportunities for conversation, more opportunities to get more people on the show as well. I've just seen problem being, say, he never gets invited on the channel anymore. But it's because we haven't been making as much content. But there will be more. There'll be plenty of opportunities, and I do hope the problem being and yourselves come on and have a chat with us about Doctor Who too, as it all this exciting time sort of really starts to take flight. And whatever's going on the telly, leave them to whatever they're doing. We can have much more fun on YouTube all together. And come along for the ride with us, and we won't let you down, even if the BBC does. How about that?
And just before I go, maybe you should give Aina duty.
Oh, here we go.
Oh no, just saying, give Aina duty Charlotte had to convince me for ages.
No, I had to pester you. I didn't convince
you. No. Oh dear.
What are you two like? I don't know.
They work so well together, these two, don't they? You know, I have seen some of their other shows, and they do work really well together, and it's always entertaining. So, thank you very much again for having us on. But I'm going to bed now after that lovely story. I'm shattered. What a great show. Thank you very much.
We both need our beauty sleep. You guys don't.
So I don't know. See everybody in the chat on the 17th as we'll be back to do our episode 5, series 2, Aina Duty, and
wow.
Sasha do and steals the show. And to be honest, if you see Chibnall, that's the power of a decent script, because I never really liked Sasha do and up until I sat and watched them series 12 in the duty. And then prove to me wrong, to be honest.
All this.
I know. I like the fact that Daniel always says what he means, and that's really good.
Oh yeah.
Never
that's because of whereabouts in Scotland he comes from. You see, they're very honest up that up there.
Good for you. Don't ever change that, Daniel. Never change.
So thanks for everybody in the chat that supported.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
If you feel inclined to leave a comment after the show, do that as well. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the space.
Oh, bless you.
And subscribe to this channel here, and make sure you're still subscribed, because YouTube will like to take away my subscribers and share the live stream about.
Yep, so everybody have a good night, and we'll see you soon after our little break.
Oh, thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, guys.